Hi everyone, it's Crafty Tina's. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a half sheet notebook with the hidden wire binding. We're going to be making this from start to finish in this video. We are using the R Memory Cinch, double loop wire bindings, but instead of making a tablet where the wire is on the outside, we are going to make the wire binding hidden on the inside. This book still sits flat. When you open it up, it still sits flat. These are half pages. I don't cut my half pages. I take a full sheet and print it and then fold it. That way you won't get ink going through when you write on one page and you flip it over to the other. So let's get started. It's very, very simple considering how complex it looks. It did a great job containing the wire bindings inside the book. You can see that. This is a 1/2 inch thick, and for the wires I used a 7/16. In this book, I'm going to use, the book we're going to make, I'm using watercolor paper, which is 90 pound watercolor paper, 20 sheets. But for this book, I used copier paper folded in half, and there's 25 sheets for this one. Any amount that will fit inside the 7/16 wire will work. Your amount is going to depend on what type of paper you use or what type of medium you use. Like if you used cardstock, or in this case watercolor paper, it's going to affect how many pages. So if you've seen my video where I made this guide, you will be able to take what you're going to put on the inside and know if it will fit into your 9/16. And this does. There's room left over. In this case, we don't add the covers when we are calculating how thick it can go in the binding, because the binding has nothing to do with the covers. They are left out of the equation, and you'll see how we do that as we go. So let's get started on what we need. There's a lot of different size supplies here, so I will put these in the description for you. This is what I want inside my book, and I've already punched all the holes but one so I can show you how I line it up. This is 90 pound watercolor paper, and instead of being 5 1/2, I made my watercolor paper 5 1/4 because I wanted a little extra of the binding on the side. It doesn't affect anything for the measuring and the punching. I just wanted to show you that. You're going to notice a little more cover on the right hand side. The double loop wire we're using today is 7/16 double loop, come from Amazon. I will link all of the Amazon purchases. This is the 7/16 double loop. The outside cover of this book is not vinyl, it is actually wallpaper. Adhesive wallpaper. It's a vinyl, but it's not like buying the printed vinyl on Amazon that you use for crafts or for cutting on the silhouette or the Cricut. This is actual wallpaper that's already adhesive. You just stick it to the wall. It's very thick and it's textured. It's actually working really well. I did another video where I did a recipe card book and I used wallpaper. I loved it so much I ordered some more. So we are going to have 3 pieces of cardstock, and all 3 pieces are a different size. This is going to be for your binding of your wires, and it is 7 1/4 by 1 1/2. These 2 are your inside cover inserts. They are both 8 1/2 tall, but one is 5 1/4 and one is 5 1/2. You need the 1 1/4 for the back and the 5 1/4 for the back and the 5 1/2 for the front. Again, I will put the actual measurements in the description. But for the sake of this video, it's 8 1/2 by 5 1/4, 8 1/2 by 5 1/2. You're also going to need some of your vinyl or your wallpaper in this case. You're going to need 2 small pieces. One of them is 3 inch by 7 1/4, And we're going to use this piece to wrap around our cardstock, and that's going to be our binding. This piece is going to go in the center inside of our book, and this piece is 3 inches by 8 inches. The large piece that we're going to need, and it's wrinkled because this was a roll and I've put it to flatten it out. This one is 10 inches by 13.5 inches across. This is the entire cover of your book stretched out and wrapped around the edges. And the last thing is our chipboard. This is 30-point chipboard. You need 2 pieces at 5 3/4 by 8 3/4, and 1 piece that is 1.5 by 8 3/4. This makes our book. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make the book itself by taking the vinyl, laying it side down, sticky side up. Don't want those to blow away. Before I peel this off, I'll explain a little. We basically are laying these out front, spine, and back, leaving a small gap. And you can buy the 3D file if you have a 3D printer, or you can buy this actual item on Etsy and Amazon. This is what I'm going to use to space the space I need between all 3 pieces. I want enough on each side to wrap around, just like we do with the front and back covers when we're making our regular notebooks. We always wrap the edges around on all 4 sides. In this case, we're basically attaching all the pieces into one. So let's move these over. We are going to peel back the adhesive. Sticky side up. Try to use your nails when you're getting it off so that you're not touching it. The oils in your skin is what removes the adhesive. Now I want to put it about a 1/2 inch away, 1/2 inch to 1 inch. I was pretty generous with the extra amount on all 4 sides. Once I've placed this one down and I know it's secure, don't rub the edges. Chipboard leaves nasty paper cuts. I take the tool and I just add it to the bottom corner or the top corner, your preference. Because of the camera, I have to do it to the bottom. This lines up my next piece. It actually spaces it out to the same gap and lines up the bottoms. I then take this off, move it to the other side of my centerpiece, and I add the next piece. You can eyeball this. These are not very expensive. I would much rather have that than trying to get this straight. So now I have, it's nice and secure. We are going to take the piece of vinyl, the longer one, the 8-inch one, and we're going to put it down the center prior to folding this in. This is basically to hide the chipboard, so you can't see it when you look into the holes. If you look really carefully, you can see some beige that I didn't get covered up. So we're going to make sure we put it more this way than that way. So you want a little bit more on this side than on this side. Lining it up doesn't matter as long as this is going to cover each side. And it's always easier to start this when you're not on camera. So we're basically going to put it right here. And you can put it in your little creases. And now we're going to fold our sides down, but first we have to clip the corners. You want to clip the corners so that it's close to the point, but you do not want to go all the way to the point, or it will leave a small gap and you will see your chipboard after you do your folds. So once we've clipped our corners, we can now fold in our vinyl on all 4 sides. I like to run my hands along the chipboard first to kind of get that crease going, and then also start in the center and work your way out. Pulling it snug and mashing it down. I've noticed that this wallpaper is really nice for not having creases and bubbles, I guess because it's thicker and it's textured. It does a really good job laying down flat. We're going to do that to the next side where I run my hand along the back. Starting in the center and work our way out. Again, running our hand along the outside edge just to form a slight crease. You can tell it's creased by the way it stands up. Start in the center and work your way out, making it nice and snug. Go to the next side, make our crease again, start in the center and work your way out. Now we can fold along those creases to get our vinyl inside the creases. Don't use anything sharp. I think the wallpaper you're safe, but if you're using regular vinyl, you will cut it if you're too hard scraping in there. So now we have the actual cover on the outside is done. But now we need to do some work on the inside. So what we're going to do next is we are going to make the spine. And this is going to be what holds your book inside. I actually made this by accident. This wasn't the direction I was going, and it ended up being perfect. So I'm just going with it. This is 1.5 and this is 3. So you want to put this, it's probably a little off. I did a little more vinyl than cardstock just so I could make sure I covered it completely. I want to put it along the outside edge. And I'm going to cut the extra off. I didn't think I'd be able to line it up perfect, so I kind of gave it a little extra vinyl. It's much easier to cut the vinyl after the fact. Okay. Now that I've cut that extra off, you could have waited till you fold it to cut it off as well. I want to start in the center again and work my way down. Just creating a nice crease. Now I basically have a piece of cardstock that is 1.5, and I put extra on the other side as well, so I'm just going to cut that off. It cuts very, very well. I'm just basically sliding my scissors along. Now I have a very tear-resistant spine. I mean, like, this is really sturdy and tear-resistant to hold my book together. This is going to go inside, and your book's going to be held. So the next thing I need to do, we're done with this, is I need to punch my holes in both my spine and my book. And that's where these come in handy. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the sheet. I'm going to show you how to punch the sheet using my template. This is an, sorry about that. This is an 8.5 sheet. I want to put 14 holes, but I want to center them, just like this template says. So there's going to be 2 rounds of punches because the machine only punches 12 holes. The first, I'm going to line it up. And I had another video where I showed you how to line up the centimeters. That's what I was using as markings. Because it works out both ways, I put both. You can either set your machine to be 1.5 or set your machine to be 4 centimeters lined up to 18 centimeters. You're basically lining up those two lines. Or you're lining up the 1.5. This will be my first punch. All of my buttons need to be pushed in because I want all 12 holes. I've adjusted how much space I want here because I moved the slider to 1.5. That means this first line on the top is matched to the 1.5 line on the slider. So we put that inside, punch, and then open so that your paper can lay flat. You're going to line up your next to the last hole. It goes in this little prong thingy. If you push this down on that hole, the next to the last one, it has lined you up to make sure you punch the very next hole. But in this case, I do not want to punch 3 and 4, so I need to pull them out, not push them in. We just want to pull out 3 and 4. You want to make sure that this end touches the back of your machine and 3 and 4 is pulled out. And punch. Then open up your tab that you locked, and now I have the same amount of space between this hole and this hole, which means my space will be equal for my book. The next thing we have to punch is we have to punch the binding strip. Now, my binding strip is not the same size as my paper, so I have to line it up as well. Otherwise, I could have all my holes here and the binding be off and my book not fit properly. So my next template is a 7 1/4, which is what this is. And I still want 14 holes. I also want to punch the holes with the vinyl that is wrapped around. So this is my side that the vinyl has wrapped around, and that's the side I wish to use. So I'm going to push all my pegs in. I like to start with the pegs in. Put everything back to normal and see what my first step is. And my first step is I'm only going to go in 1/8 of an inch, like just that much. That is all the spacing I'm going to need. And I know they sell spacers for this and all kinds of other things. I don't have a spacer for 1/8 of an inch. So all I did was I laid my ruler at that 1/8 of an inch and used that as a guide to push in my binding. Because this is so small, it doesn't come all the way out here to the markings, so I needed a guide to guide me. Once that's all the way in, all the way down, all my buttons are pushed in, I punch. That is the only one I have to line up. Now I go to the next to the last hole and put it in the side, I don't even know what this is called, button. It holds the next to the last one. I make sure this is pushed all the way in. And I did not write down what to pull out. And in this case, you pull out the 3 because I don't want to go past the end. And then I punch the last 2 holes. It punched 12 holes in the beginning, so I needed it to punch 2 more holes, and now my spacing is equal. I am going to try to make templates or get some kind of SVG printout giving this information to you based on the size of books you're making. I'm going to work on that, so make sure you subscribe and stay tuned because there will be another YouTube video just for spacing out your holes and how to punch them. We're going to move that out of the way, and now we need to bind. Now keep in mind we are not binding the outside of our book. This book does not get holes bound into it. It is simply just the cover. We need to bind our spine with all our pages onto our wire. I know you're used to putting your covers now and everything, so this is a little different. So put all of your pages, in my case it is watercolor pages, and then put your spine. Remove it. And now everything is secure on my wires. Turn your machine around to the back. And this is the 7/16 wire, which there is no 7/16. So when you are binding the 7/16, you want to go one click below the half. 7/16 is just slightly smaller than the half. So I have my little arrow pointing one click to the left of half. I'm then going to push this into my machine with this flat edge all the way to the back. Once I have it all the way to the back, I use the paper to push. And I close the wires. Now keep in mind, it's not long enough to do all of them. So I have to push this back in and close the final one. I never get that final one closed as good as the rest. That's one of my complaints, is when I make a book bigger than this surface here. I wish there was like an extension that you could actually do all of your binding in one shot. Maybe they'll make a new one and add some more features. I do know they're coming out with a universal cinch. I'm just not sure I like that one. So now I have my spine binding and all of my pages. And see, this is coming out. I am going to put this a tiny bit smaller and do this again, only because I'm not sure why my pages were coming out. That's better. You want these to overlap slightly, otherwise your pages will come out. And that is all we need the cinch for. We're going to move that up a little bit. We're going to bring our outside to finish it off. This paper is the same on one side as it is the other, so it doesn't matter which side I use. I need to now put this binding on this side. This crease here is where I'm going to line up my book. I want that center slab to be upright and my wires touching it. The wires can't go past or my book won't close. The wires can't go past that seam. And I need to make sure my book stays within the cover. In order to do that, I need to put adhesive on this for it to stick to the back of my book. I use a score tape for this because my double-sided adhesive gun, you can peel that off. You could probably peel this off as well because it is going on a vinyl surface. However, we are going to enclose it a little bit to give it some more stability. So I'm going to take off my backing. I'm going to add some more score tape to the center. One thing that's really important on this is the top and bottom. So I'm going to add a little extra because it didn't go all the way down, just to make sure it's covered. If you're using glue, paint the glue the entire surface, but stay out of your holes. Now that I have this with adhesive exposed, I'm going to pick this up, but I'm not going to lay this down yet. I'm going to hang on to it in my hand so that I can fold this book to an upright position, make sure my pages aren't hanging off the bottom or the top, And I still have my fingers holding the sticky part off the book. Once I get it to where I want it, I'm going to let it go and press it down. And now my wires are not hanging over. It is slightly off, but I have enough room over here not to matter. But my wires aren't affecting anything, and my book shuts perfect. You'll notice the spacing here is a little more than my book because this was the 5.5 and this is the 5 1/4. These are folded pages. I cut these so they were easier to manipulate, a little extra. So now let's finish off our book. We have the back that has the little spine insert here and the front that we need to cover, and that's what we're using our cardstock for. The smaller piece, the 5 1/4 piece, goes in the back because you have to allow room for the holes. The 5 1/2 wide piece goes in the front because there are no holes. You're only covering the first piece of chipboard and you're leaving a slight edge all the way around it. So this stays vinyl and these get adhesive inside your book. For these, I do use my double-sided tape. I'm going to go all the way to the edge on all 4 sides and then give it a couple in the center to make sure that it stays down and doesn't get any really air pockets or little wrinkles going on. The closer to the edge you can get it without going over, the better you are. Now when I'm putting this one down, I want to make sure that I'm doing the 1/4 inch like top and bottom, but I also don't want to hang off the edge. And I should have trimmed that one up a little bit more. I bet I went over 1/4. But the spine is not going to move. It's not like the typical ones where you can fold the book back so you can't have anything interfering with that. This book can't be folded back, and I'll show you that. So we are going to really smooth this out, and now that covers the front, the back inside, so it looks better. There's our pages, and now we're going to put this piece on the front. Gluing all 4 sides. This is Mr. Squeaky. He's my double-sided tape gun. He's worth the squeak. So now we're going to add this to the inside cover. Kind of eyeballing it to make sure we get it a little even all the way around. And there we have it. We now have a notebook that has the pages enclosed. Still lays flat on a desk, but you can bend this, but you cannot bend the pages because of where they're located. That was not a game changer for me because I plan on this being flat, laid flat anyway. I just wanted you to be able to turn the pages and let it lay flat. And I bent the top of mine when I was trying to close it, so yours will not sound like that when you open and close it. These wires do bend sometimes. You can see this one's just a little bent. You can finagle it with some little needle nose pliers or some wire benders. Or, like me, you can just let it go. But there you have it. There is our enclosed book. It's all ready for watercoloring. I might add a strap or add something on the inside pocket, maybe some stickers inside of a pocket, but it's halfway to being a gift. And we are all done. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Tap Crafty Tina's at YouTube so that you'll know when the next video comes out. Stay tuned for more, and as always, happy crafting.